I had just finished a call with my sister, but a careless mistake left the connection completely open. The call continued for exactly 7 minutes and 38 seconds, and what I secretly overheard between my stepmother and my sister saved me from total financial ruin. The phone speaker hissed with faint static against the polished surface of my heavy wooden desk. Then came the unmistakable clinking of crystal glasses. Jazzy was laughing. That sharp, grating laugh she always saved for when she won something at someone else's expense. She joked about my father's trembling hands. She mocked the way he struggled to hold a simple coffee cup that morning, calling him a pathetic, shaking leaf. Then Mina chimed in. Her voice dropped to that sickeningly sweet tone she uses to manipulate everyone around her. She bragged about swapping out his real blood pressure pills for cheap, over-the-counter magnesium supplements. She literally laughed about keeping him permanently dizzy and bedridden, just so I would keep wiring $4,500 to them every single month. They were celebrating his manufactured physical decline right inside my childhood home. My stomach twisted into a tight, heavy knot. A scream burned the back of my throat, but I clamped my jaw shut. My fingernails dug deeply into the palms of my hands until the skin broke. The sheer, breathtaking cruelty of their conversation washed over me like freezing water, stripping away every single ounce of daughterly guilt I had carried for the past decade. You do not negotiate with emotional terrorists. You do not cry over parasites. You build a trap. I leaned forward, opened my secure corporate drive, and pressed save on that audio file. They thought they were draining a gullible, endless automated teller machine. They were actually handing me the exact federal ammunition required to completely destroy their lives. The next afternoon, the blistering Arizona heat radiated off the pavement as I pulled my car into my father's driveway. Walking through that familiar front door felt exactly like stepping into an active crime scene. Knowing exactly who the murderers were and watching them smile at me. My name is Joyce. I am 32 years old, and spending the last 5 years as a high school vice principal taught me one undeniable truth regarding human behaviour. You never show an entitled bully your fear. You never let them see your anger. You let them firmly believe they hold all the power until the very second you expel them from your life forever. I walked into the spacious living room and immediately spotted Jazzy lounging on the expensive leather sofa. The silver pendant resting against her collarbone caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. It was my late mother's necklace, the one irreplaceable piece of jewellery my father promised would stay safely locked away in his private safe. I stepped toward her, extending my open palm, keeping my voice dead and flat. Hand it over, Jazzy! Right now! She rolled her eyes, her lips curling into a cruel, arrogant smirk. She unclasped the delicate silver chain from her neck. Instead of placing it in my hand, her fingers simply opened in midair. The heavy pendant hit the ceramic tile floor with a sharp, sickening crack, shattering the inlaid blue stone into a dozen jagged pieces. Oops. Must have slipped. Jazzy shrugged, inspecting her perfectly manicured nails. You make principal money, but you are crying over cheap vintage trash. No wonder you are still single and living alone. A slow, deliberate sip of tea echoed from the floral armchair sitting in the corner of the room. Aunt Carol sat there, crossing her legs, a look of mild annoyance painting her wrinkled face. Just let it go. Joyce! Her voice dripped with that lazy, condescending tone she always utilised to maintain the toxic status quo of our family. Do not cause a massive scene over a little accident. You are the older daughter. You are supposed to be the mature one. Just endure it and keep the peace. Blood rushed to my ears, pounding a steady, furious rhythm. Aunt Carol lived right next door. She visited this house every single day. She watched Mina and Jazzy slowly torture my father. She watched them rob me blind for years, and she sat there drinking their premium tea, Complicity wrapped in a floral cardigan. I swallowed the rage burning in my throat. I looked down at the shattered pieces of my mother's memory. My retaliation was already in motion. I walked right past them, ignoring the triumphant snickers echoing behind me, heading straight down the hallway to my father's master bedroom. He sat quietly by the large bay window, staring blankly out at the empty driveway. His skin looked terrifyingly pale, and his hands trembled against his knees, looking exactly like the fragile, dying man they joked about on that horrifying audio recording. The profound cruelty of their decision twisted my stomach into brutal knots. I moved toward the attached bathroom, focusing purely on the heavy wooden medicine cabinet mounted above the sink. I needed to see those swapped pills with my own eyes. I reached for the brass handle. A heavy shove hit my right shoulder. Mina lunged past me with terrifying speed, grabbing the edge of the cabinet door. She swung it backward with brutal, unhinged force, slamming the thick wood directly onto my fingers. The bone-crushing impact sent a shockwave of white-hot agony shooting entirely up my arm to my elbow. Blood instantly pooled under my fingernails, dripping down my bruised knuckles onto the pristine white porcelain sink. Mina showed absolutely zero remorse. She spun around, her face twisting into a flawless mask of pure, theatrical panic. "Mark, come look at your crazy daughter," she shrieked, pointing a trembling, accusatory finger at me. "She is trying to steal from us and hurt herself to frame me. Call a psychiatrist right now. Mark, she is completely losing her mind." My father shuffled to the bathroom doorway, profound confusion clouding his tired, sunken eyes. The pain in my hand throbbed in perfect rhythm with my racing heartbeat. I looked at Mina's screaming, not victorious face. I forced a slow, chilling smile, grabbing a clean towel from the rack. I carefully wrapped my bleeding fingers without saying a single word in my defense. They broke my mother's necklace for sport. They crushed my hand to protect their lies. They paraded my father's manufactured illness around the neighbourhood like a golden trophy. Let them scream. Let them play the desperate victims. Every single drop of blood sinking into that white cotton towel only sealed their absolute, inescapable destruction. The heavy bandage on my hand throbbed against the leather steering wheel the next morning as I pulled back into their driveway. They had aggressively summoned me back for a mandatory family meeting. They wanted a massive lifestyle upgrade, and they wanted me to fund it immediately. Mina sat regally at the centre of the kitchen island, tracing the rim of a ceramic coffee mug. Jazzy stood right behind her, scrolling mindlessly on her expensive phone. They slid a thick, glossy real estate brochure across the cold granite counter, pushing it directly toward my chest. Camelback Mountain, a stunning luxury penthouse overlooking the entire sprawling city. The printed price tag sat heavily at the bottom of the glossy page. $2,500,000. Mina crossed her arms, looking down her nose at me with absolute unfiltered disdain. "Your father is rapidly deteriorating in this cramped, depressing house. The stairs exhaust his failing heart. He requires a single-story luxury environment with premium air filtration to properly recover his shattered health. You are going to purchase this penthouse for us immediately, and you will put the property deed entirely in Jazzy's name to help us avoid complicated real estate taxes." I stared down at the glossy photographs featuring massive infinity pools and imported marble countertops. A dark, bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. I bit the inside of my cheek until the metallic taste of blood grounded my swirling thoughts. Mina leaned across the granite, her eyes narrowing into dark, venomous slits. "Let us be completely honest with each other. Joyce, you have absolutely no husband. You have absolutely no kids. You drive to a high school every single morning to discipline other people's children, and then you drive back to a completely empty house. This sick, dying old man sitting in the next room is the only thing giving your pathetic life any real value. You should be down on your knees thanking us for giving you the privilege of paying his medical bills. So, stop stalling, act like a proper daughter, and write the massive check. Her absolute arrogance was completely breathtaking. Their uncontrollable greed was a living, breathing monster, consuming everything in its path. I was about to feed that monster a poisoned apple. I maintained a perfectly serene, obedient mask. I reached out and pulled the glossy luxury brochure toward my chest, clutching it like a sacred document. That makes perfect sense, I said, keeping my voice soft, compliant, and thoroughly defeated. I will fund the purchase completely in cash to speed up the closing process. Jazzy practically dropped her phone on the tile floor. Her jaw went completely slack. Mina's cruel smirk widened into a massive, triumphant grin, her eyes flashing with pure financial victory. However, I continued, carefully smoothing a tiny crease in the glossy paper, to clear a $2,500,000 wire transfer through my corporate bank, my insurance underwriter mandates one strict administrative requirement. They have to send an independent medical examiner to the house this week. They just need to verify his severe cardiac condition in person for the massive liability coverage. It is a boring, standard formality. Mina waved her manicured hand, utterly dismissive of the massive threat standing right in front of her. Fine. Send absolutely whoever you want. We have absolutely nothing to hide from any doctor. They built their own concrete prison right then and there. The medical examiner arrived at the house exactly 48 hours later. He carried a heavy leather briefcase and wore a small, inconspicuous camera, perfectly disguised as a black lapel pin on his grey suit jacket. He was not a doctor. He was a highly licensed federal private investigator hired directly by my corporate lawyer, carrying full authorization to document ongoing criminal fraud. I sat quietly in the corner of the living room and watched the absolute masterpiece unfold. Mina practically tripped over herself to play the tragic dedicated caretaker. She eagerly arranged the fake, swapped-out pill bottles perfectly on the glass coffee table, ensuring the investigator could see every label. She spread out the fabricated cardiac charts her shady contacts had forged, pointing out the falsified declining metrics. She proudly gave a 10-minute theatrical presentation on my father's manufactured heart failure, soaking up the investigator's polite nods and sympathetic murmurs. The investigator reached into his leather briefcase. He pulled out a crisp, official federal medical verification document and clicked a heavy steel pen. I just need your signature right here at the bottom to verify these specific medical records are authentic and accurate for the insurance release, he said, his tone perfectly bored and bureaucratic, betraying absolutely nothing. Mina snatched the pen from his hand. She pressed the metallic tip to the paper and signed her full legal name with an elaborate, sweeping flourish. The pen clicked shut. It sounded exactly like a heavy steel padlock snapping into place. By signing that specific legal document in front of a third-party federal investigator, she officially escalated her petty domestic manipulation into documented federal wire fraud and severe medical forgery. She happily handed over the rope, tied the thick noose, and wrapped it securely around her own neck. All for a luxury penthouse she would never step foot inside. Friday morning arrived with a cool, sharp breeze. Richard's downtown law office smelled of expensive leather, polished mahogany, and impending absolute doom. Mina, Jazzy, and Aunt Carol strutted into the expansive glass conference room, like conquering royalty, arriving at a grand coronation. They wore absurdly expensive designer outfits, draped in premium silk and carrying exclusive handbags purchased directly from my drain bank account. Jazzy immediately snapped her fingers at a passing paralegal in the hallway. She demanded sparkling water with a fresh slice of lemon, complaining loudly about the poor service. Aunt Carol settled into a plush leather chair, adjusting her heavy pearl necklace and whispering eagerly to Mina about decorating the penthouse living room. My father shuffled into the room last. He looked incredibly frail, lowering himself slowly into a seat near the far corner of the massive table. I sat at the absolute head of the long glass table. My bandaged hand rested flat against the cool, reflective surface. Richard walked in. He carried absolutely zero paperwork. He bypassed the head of the table, walked directly to the heavy glass door, and pushed it shut. The heavy deadbolt clicked with a sharp, final snap, echoing loudly in the silent room. He picked up a small black remote from the table. He bypassed all the polite greetings. He bypassed the real estate contracts. He simply pressed the center button. The surround sound speakers hidden in the ceiling woke up. The audio file blasted through the quiet room with deafening clarity. Jazzy's grating, triumphant laugh echoed violently off the glass walls. Then came Mina's sickeningly sweet voice. The horrible words hit the air like physical blows. She bragged about the swapped pills. She boasted about keeping Mark permanently dizzy. She laughed hysterically about the thousands of dollars flowing into her bank account every single month. Aunt Carol gasped, clutching her pearls so tightly her knuckles turned white. Jazzy dropped her expensive phone on the table. Richard pressed the button a second time. The ceiling projector illuminated the massive blank wall behind me. The hidden camera footage from Wednesday afternoon played in crystal clear high definition. There was Mina, smiling greedily, happily producing the fake medical charts. There was Mina, taking the heavy steel pen and signing her full legal name to a federal verification form. The colour vanished entirely from Mina's face. The smug arrogance peeled away in an instant, leaving behind raw, ugly, terrifying panic. Sweat instantly beaded along her hairline, dripping down the side of her perfectly painted face. But a cornered rat always bites. Mina shoved her heavy leather chair back so violently it crashed to the carpeted floor. "This is a complete lie," she shrieked, her voice cracking into a high, hysterical pitch. She made this entire thing up. "It is a deep fake, an artificial intelligence scam designed to ruin me." She lunged wildly across the glass table. Her manicured hands clawed frantically toward Richard's open laptop, desperate to sweep the machine onto the floor and smash the hard drive to pieces to destroy the evidence. Richard caught her wrist mid-air. He gripped her arm with absolute, immovable force, twisting it just enough to halt her momentum completely. His expression remained completely blank, devoid of any sympathy or fear. "Assaulting an officer of the court guarantees immediate, prolonged incarceration," Richard stated, his voice dropping to a dead, icy calm that chilled the entire room. "Especially since 2 armed police officers are currently standing right out in the lobby, waiting for my explicit signal." Mina froze. Her chest heaved rapidly. The wild, frantic energy drained entirely out of her body, replaced by sheer, paralyzing terror. Saliva gathered at the corner of her trembling mouth as she desperately struggled to form another plausible excuse. Jazzy sat completely paralysed in her leather chair. Her jaw hung wide open. Her eyes darted wildly toward the locked door, wide with the stark, terrifying realisation of a trapped animal. The exclusive designer handbag sitting in her lap suddenly looked exactly like a heavy iron anchor dragging her straight to the bottom of the deepest ocean. I looked completely past them. I looked directly at my father. The chemical fog was entirely gone from his eyes. The brutal, devastating truth settled heavily over him. His hands shook. Not from the fake medication they forced down his throat, but from the earth-shattering betrayal destroying his world. He stared at the woman he married, the woman who intentionally poisoned him for a luxury apartment. His heart broke right there in the chair, shattering into a million pieces, but his mind was finally, sharply, undeniably clear. The heavy silence in the room stretched until someone finally broke under the immense pressure. It was Aunt Carol. She pushed herself up from the chair, her hands shaking violently. She plastered on that familiar, sickeningly sweet, enabling smile. Joyce. Honey. She stammered, gripping her pearls tight enough to snap the string. Family is always family. We can sort this terrible misunderstanding out behind closed doors. We just need to forgive each other and move forward. I slid a thick manila folder across the smooth glass. It stopped right at her trembling fingertips. You watched them poison your own brother for 5 years. My voice hung in the air, cold, sharp, and absolutely merciless. And you stayed completely silent because Mina secretly promised you a 10% cut of the penthouse sale. Carol's breath hitched. She gasped for air like she was drowning. Your name is right at the very top of the criminal accomplice report currently sitting on the lead detective's desk, I added, watching the life drain from her eyes. Her knees completely gave out. She collapsed into the chair, sobbing uncontrollably into her hands. The cowardly enabler was finally, permanently broken. I turned back to my father. Mark sat perfectly still. The fog was entirely gone from his mind, replaced by a hardened, sorrowful resolve. Richard slid a thick stack of paper across the table, unilateral divorce papers, demanding absolute separation of all assets based on criminal fraud. My father picked up the pen. He pressed the tip to the dotted line and signed his name with absolute, unwavering conviction. He stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the exit without giving his weeping wife a single backward glance. Richard casually walked over and unlocked the conference room door. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside the room. Heavy steel handcuffs clicked with a cold metallic snap around Jazzy's wrists. She immediately thrashed against the officer, screaming horrific obscenities, kicking her expensive designer heels against the wooden doorframe. Mina just stared blankly at the floor, completely hollowed out, offering zero resistance as the officers marched them both out into the crowded, staring lobby. The legal and financial fallout hit them exactly like a runaway freight train. Within 3 weeks, my generous financial tap shut off permanently. Jazzy's emergency credit lines defaulted immediately. Aggressive debt collectors repossessed her luxury car from her driveway and seized every single designer bag she bought with my father's stolen medical money. Mina sat shivering in a cold county jail cell, facing multiple severe counts of federal wire fraud and aggravated elder abuse, completely unable to post the massive bail required for her release. Aunt Carol was socially exiled from the entire neighbourhood, permanently under active investigation for criminal complicity, and entirely cut off from the family she helped destroy for a payout she never received. They were left with absolutely nothing but the clothes on their backs and the crushing weight of their own greed. Mark moved into a premium assisted living community just 2 miles from my high school. The facility nurses immediately threw away the fake magnesium supplements. They gave him actual, prescribed blood pressure medication. His natural colour returned within days. His hands completely stopped shaking. The manufactured dying old man vanished entirely, replaced by the strong, vibrant father I always knew. I sat on a wooden bench outside his new apartment building, looking down at my glowing phone screen. 2 blocked contacts stared back at me. Mina? Jazzy? I swiped left on both names. I hit delete, I locked the screen, closed my eyes and took a deep, long breath. The Arizona air had never tasted so remarkably clean. The heavy wooden gavel fell exactly 4 months later. The strict federal judge ignored every single theatrical tear Mina shed on the witness stand during the sentencing phase. The court sentenced her to 8 years in a federal penitentiary for wire fraud and aggravated elder abuse, mandating a strict zero-tolerance policy for early parole. The final ruling also ordered a compulsory financial restitution of $245,000 to reimburse my father for the years of stolen medical funds. Jazzy avoided a prison cell by turning state's evidence against her own mother, trading her family loyalty for legal leniency. The court slapped her with 5 years of strict probation and ordered her to complete 1,000 hours of grueling community service. The state permanently garnishes her minimum wage paychecks until her portion of the financial debt is completely settled. The social fallout crushed them just as completely as the legal system. Aunt Carol attempted to attend her usual Sunday morning church service the week after the arrest hit the local news. The entire congregation, people she had shared coffee with for 2 decades, actively turned their backs the moment she walked through the doors. The silence in the sanctuary hung so heavy, she walked out before the choir even finished the opening hymn. She sold her house 3 months later and relocated in total, humiliating disgrace. The neighbourhood watched the moving truck drive away, offering nothing but closed doors and tightly drawn blinds. 8 months into her long sentence, a standard issue white envelope appeared in my mailbox. It carried the official blue ink stamp of the Federal Correctional Institution in the top right corner. Mina's familiar, looping cursive handwriting covered the cheap, lined paper folded inside. The letter carried the exact same manipulative tone she had weaponized for my entire adult life. She claimed the entire situation was a massive, unfortunate misunderstanding. She insisted her illegal actions were solely meant to secure a better financial future for her daughter. She ended the lengthy page by demanding my immediate forgiveness, leaning heavily on the ridiculous claim that she was still my mother and deserved my respect. The old version of me, the dutiful daughter, drowning in manufactured guilt, would have experienced a massive spike of anxiety reading those words. The old me would have drafted a furious 10-page response dismantling every single lie, standing in my kitchen, holding that cheap piece of paper. A hollow weight settled in my chest. The blazing anger was completely gone. The deep sorrow was completely gone. A profound, heavy indifference rested comfortably over my shoulders. I stopped reading after the second rambling paragraph. I walked over to the paper shredder sitting under my office desk, fed the letter directly into the metal teeth, and listened to the satisfying, grinding hum as her manipulative words were shredded into 100 meaningless strips. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, sat down at my table, and calmly resumed grading my students' essays. The space they used to occupy in my mind now holds actual, genuine light. Sundays used to be a terrifying battlefield of passive-aggressive demands and staged medical emergencies. Now, Sundays are strictly reserved for my true chosen family. I host a massive dinner at my house every single weekend. My father sits at the head of the long oak table, looking 10 years younger, his deep, rumbling laughter echoing down the hallway. Beside him sit my closest friends, the fellow teachers and school administrators who anchored me when my childhood home operated exactly like a toxic prison. We share warm, incredible food. We exchange authentic, hilarious stories. Everyone sitting in those chairs genuinely wants to be there. The stark contrast between the dark, suffocating environment Mina controlled and the open, peaceful reality I built remains absolutely staggering. True healing arrived the moment I recognized that family requires consistent, loving action. Not just a biological default or a signed marriage certificate. The people gathered around my table treat me with the absolute respect I deserve. They view my demanding career as a testament to hard work, not a massive bank account waiting to be raided. They view my resilience as a strong pillar to lean on, not a weakness to endlessly exploit. Looking back at that entire 5-year nightmare, surviving a profoundly toxic family requires a fundamental shift in how you process reality. Narcissists and emotional manipulators rely heavily on the standard, polite social contract. They actively exploit your natural empathy. They weaponize your inherent sense of familial duty, using it as a heavy iron chain to keep you trapped in a perpetual cycle of giving. Facing people who intentionally drain your life, who aggressively gaslight your memories, and who use unearned guilt to control your bank account means you must embrace 3 undeniable truths to survive. Rule number 1, complicity is not neutrality, it is active participation, the enablers hiding in your life. The Aunt Carols who sit quietly in the corner sipping tea while you endure horrific abuse. Present exactly the same danger as the abusers themselves. People demanding you keep the peace while you are being systematically destroyed are absolutely never protecting the family. They are only protecting their own selfish comfort. Do not let them off the hook. Rule number 2, never negotiate with emotional terrorists. Dealing with individuals who lie and manipulate as easily as they draw breath means engaging in a screaming argument is an automatic loss. They crave your yelling. They feed entirely on your breakdowns. Your visible pain proves they hold incredible power over you. Starve them of your pain. Collect your evidence in absolute terrifying silence. Forge your boundaries out of solid iron, and let the justice system do all the talking for you. Rule number 3, setting firm boundaries will inevitably transform you into the villain of their story. Accept that title. Wear it proudly. The exact moment you stop functioning as a walking automated teller machine, the parasites will loudly label you selfish to anyone who will listen. The second you refuse to absorb their daily abuse, they will brand you as cruel and heartless. Embodying a safe, protected villain is infinitely better than dying as a compliant, destroyed martyr. Have you ever dealt with a cowardly enabler like Aunt Carol in your own life? Someone who stood by watching you suffer, repeatedly urging you to just be the bigger person and stay completely quiet. How did you handle their profound betrayal? Share your personal experiences in the comments below and subscribe to the channel if you believe in ruthless, uncompromising justice. I am Joyce, and I am finally completely free.